Thanks, Anna. So today we'd like to talk to you about how Downer is using process automation to drive productivity and better experiences. And we have Karl Henderson from Downer joining us to walk us through a little bit about Downer, talk about how they selected FlowForma as a process automation tool, how they applied it in the business, and the processes that were built, and ultimately how it succeeded and what Downer will be doing next in terms of process automation. So with that, what I'd like to do is just talk to Karl and ask him a little bit about Downer. Over to you, Karl.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, so Downer is spreads across both Australia and New Zealand, but I work in the New Zealand part. And within New Zealand, we've got three sectors. We've got transport, utilities, and facilities, and we've got about 10,000 people currently working in the team. I mainly focus on the transport sector, and yeah, we have quite some of the biggest projects in New Zealand under our scope at the moment. My role within Downer is digital engineering technical lead. I've come over from the UK about 3 years ago. Been in the industry for 19 years now, working in design, construction, and handover. But I guess the key area for me and what we're doing is kind of increasing efficiencies on site. So through safety, quality, and handover, making sure that what we supply our clients is much better quality than previously. One of the biggest wins for us has been through safety and with FlowForma, which we'll get into later. But yeah, I guess my key areas is to look at collecting data, analyzing it, and making it visible to all levels of the business, both site and at the corporate level. And one of my things I really enjoy doing is actually bringing the teams along for the ride. And I think FlowForma really helps with that, being such an easy platform to use.
Absolutely. Downer seems like a very large company, servicing a wide array of projects throughout New Zealand. And it must be indeed a challenging job to move them along in the digital journey and get everybody involved and as you say, bring the teams along and get them to adopt all the new systems.
Absolutely, yeah. There's quite a range of people, all from different backgrounds. It's very international, the projects over here, so everyone's got a different way of working. But I think with the simplicity of being able to build their own processes within the system, it really has helped make the adoption quite easy.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, adoption is always a challenge, and I think getting people to buy into the program, getting them to digitize their own systems and get a bit of ownership must really help the adoption along.
No, definitely,
Yeah, so that's a big challenge ahead of you. So let's talk a little bit about how you looked at those challenges and how they motivated the Down New Zealand to look for a process automation tool. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed when I came here, everything was still very paper orientated. We had some processes, but they were set up by IT and weren't really well adopted because they didn't really work for every site.
Yeah.
So we needed some platform that we could use to make the sign-off of processes simple. Stop all the bottlenecks, being the engineer having to go back to the site office to get something signed off, engineers linking the wrong cost codes to the wrong items and things not being signed off in time for us to get things on site. There was a bit of a trouble with it. People knowing where we were in the process as well, at all different levels. So we were very good at a business level to monitor data, but actually down on the sites, we weren't capturing that same information. So it's been, that was one of our key areas to look at. Obviously, we promote New Zealand, we promote very green way of working. So I think that was definitely one of our another key area for us. And safety, our first process, which we'll talk about later, is one that's was a key driver to actually implementing FlowForma.
Yeah, that's something that you see across our client base. What I'm hearing there is that you had a challenge on data quality, that you weren't always capturing the right information at the right time and so on, and you had poor visibility on the processes in the organization. And then you're finishing off there, I guess, on safety being a key driver. And we see that in so many construction companies across the world, that a key business requirement is to improve safety and managing of all that, managing
Yeah,
risk.
and I think working in this way, a very data-centric way, it does allow you to bring more information to the handheld device out on site. So it is actually having the right information at the right time.
Yeah.
To help streamline those decisions.
Yeah,
that are being made.
Absolutely. Capturing all that data really helps in terms of decision making down the line. So yeah, digital process automation is definitely it's a strong way of dealing with that. So maybe we can move on to our next question, which is, what were Down in New Zealand's requirements for a process automation tool? You identify the challenges. So I guess you went out to market to find a solution that would help you digitize those processes effectively. Maybe you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I arrived, we were using things like Power Apps and the Esri system, but there was a lot of limitations with Esri. There was substantial limitation on what we could achieve, but and with the Power Apps, it reduced it to certain people that can actually build these platforms.
Yes.
And having to create multiple forms for different platforms as well. That was the time taken to produce these it didn't really outweigh the positivity of using this. So so the key thing was that we build it once and we can roll it out across all platforms.
Yeah.
One of the key things for Downer, they're very IT security orientated. So actually hosting our data in our own tenancy was another really useful or really key function to getting it over the line.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a lot of people that are not Downer working on our site, so having the ability to create public forms and using that data in the same way that we use the internal data is really a key driver for why we went with FlowForma.
Yeah, it's interesting. We see that quite a bit in our client base, that especially in construction, that companies want to extend their processes out to external parties. So they need that ability for those external parties to interact with the system. I'm thinking particularly of contractors and subcontractors who may not be as on your system. They may not have logins and so on to your system, but they still need to be able to key in data and record their activity tasks. Yeah.
I'm a strong believer that in order for any of this to work, you need everyone on board. It needs to be a team approach. So we need the ability to bring our subcontractors on board to collect that data, but then we can feed into our main database and analyze for each of the business levels.
Yeah,
I think, as I mentioned earlier, the ability that the platform is easy to use we can bring people of all different levels into the system, building forms. We've got site managers, project managers, site engineers, all building forms, which then go through an approval process by me to ensure that they're able to be replicated across the business. We wouldn't get this with any other platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of other platforms do require a certain level of technical knowledge to build their processes. And you mentioned their Power Platform, Power Apps, and so on. It does require a lot of understanding to be able to build out solutions with those tools. So not really designed for building complex processes and so on by people who are just in the business rather than people who are technical.
I think the fact that Downer has invested a lot of money in what we call the Downer standard documentation, and the ability to actually stick to those documentations to print what we capture on site out into that is a big win, and it's going to be what pushes Downer to implement this company-wide eventually.
Yeah. I also just want to pick up on another point that you made there, that basically, you know, a lot of these other tools out there are focused on personal productivity. But what you're really looking for are tools that work across departments, across multiple different resources, who may be geographically in different places, etc. And you have to have an ability to actually work across departments and across, you know, suppliers, for example, so that everybody involved in the process end to end all touch it and all update their own information into it and so on, carry out the tasks. So I mean, FlowForma is something that certainly enables you to do that.
Yeah, and just the whole, it allows such a scalable platform. The whole governance application just helps us build those sites quite quickly, and allows us to manage the processes without having to delve too deep into each site. It's really, it makes my job much easier anyway.
Yeah, that's great. We just might move on to our next question there. So can you tell us about some of the processes that Downer New Zealand has automated in FlowForma?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, so the key one here, the one I mentioned earlier, this is our big safety push. This is what we call the permit to dig. So we start the whole process. Well, I'll just explain a bit of the backstory. Prior to this, it was the engineer would have to fill out a paper form. He'd have to review all the utility drawings before being able to get that process signed off. It would have to go through 3 different people before it was made live. What we've done now is we've created a digital form using FlowForma. We've connected that through to our Survey 123 application, where we have a GIS map with all our utilities on. We then produce a polygon of the area that we want the permit for, and we connect that back to the app using the Power Platform tools. The form gets completed by the engineers. It then goes through a sign-off process, which is all automated through the FlowForma platform. Once it completes that, we get a PDF of the permit, which is to the Downer standard, and we also get a PDF of the permit area with all the utilities intersecting in that polygon that was selected. And this remains open for 7 days, and then notifies the engineer of when it's closed, and allows us to visualize all the permits on the platform using both tools as GIS and FlowForma side by side. So it's been a real game changer for the way we work.
That's really great. And I can't thank you enough, by the way, Karl, for putting this slide together that shows the different aspects of a process. I mean, a process is not simply a screen. It's not simply a set of tasks. It's a mixture of data, documentation, interaction with third-party platforms. There's a lot going on here, a lot going on. And it's fantastic that this could all be put together essentially with non-IT resources, because I can see straight away, like the volume and complexity of data being captured is quite significant. And then you're interacting with the GIS system and so on, which is really quite special. And then at the end of the day, you're getting a report and all that. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So it's fantastic that you can put all of this together.
And I think I'd like to mention as well, actually, by doing all of this, we've had it challenged many times, and we've improved the Downer permit to dig system as a whole because of the outcomes of using this. So no, it's been really good for us.
Yeah, that's really good. The way you can continuously improve it to actually refine your process. So if basically, I think what you're saying there is you had an existing process, and through digitizing it, you kind of learned more about it and were able to refine it and make it better, which is a great outcome. Really interesting.
Yeah, on to the
Yeah,
next one.
the next one. Okay, go ahead.
So this started out as a very simple form, just to digitize a purchase order, and it turned out to become quite a bit of a beast of the way it works and very automated. So what we started off with is a manual entry of all the information, and we later connected that to a work breakdown structure of cost codes, so that it ensured that at each time the engineer requested some purchases, they were linking it to the correct cost code and the correct work pack, so that once it gets to sign off, we can actually use that data that we've collected to analyze the money left in each of these work packs. So again, we've taken a really what includes 2 or 3 people to actually review and approve, is to bring it into one system and actually have those checks done before it even gets to final sign off.
Yeah, that's really good. It's interesting that you went for automating purchase orders. It's one of the most common use cases we see with FlowForma. So not just in construction, in other industries as well. Everybody seems to have a challenge around procurement and so on. And purchase order processing is just a process that you see digitized again and again and again. But also, what we see is that everybody has their own way of doing things. So everybody tends to have different purchase order approval processes, and I'm looking at one right now that looks different to anything I've seen before, but also that has this little special piece in it as well, where you're basically integrating with that um, project structure. So it's really interesting to see that integration played a big part here as well, that you were able to integrate with that background project cost code structure and so on, and draw that data into the process as you went along.
Yeah, it's a great, it's probably the most used process on our tool. I think we're over 2,000 processes in 6 months. So
and that's not uncommon. Purchase orders and procurement in general, as I say, it's a very common use case, and people use it a great deal to run our customer base. Great.
Next one.
Move on to the next one, yeah.
So this is probably our latest, what I would call the latest beast. This is basically, this one we actually started off with I'll start on the left-hand side. So we have a public form that we use Engage for, that everyone that comes to site, they have to complete this form. Once they've completed it, it then goes into, there's one of 2 processes. It goes into a list of everyone that's now been inducted. And it also, as part of that form, there's a few requirements that they have to agree that they've done some of the training. And if they haven't done any of the training, our health and safety team get notified in order to get them on the training course prior to working. We've then linked that to a sign in, sign out app, which sits at the front of the site. So as they come into site, they click sign in. It looks through that SharePoint list of everyone that's been inducted, and they can sign in. It logs that time, and vice versa. When they sign out, they do the same. Once on a weekly basis, then we have we have what we call a daily job record, which then imports all the sign in, sign out, and gives us information for hours booked. That then gets allocated to the correct cost codes within the daily job record by the senior site engineer. And we push that data straight. Once that's approved, it creates a PDF of the DJL, which we keep as a record, and it pushes it to another SharePoint list, which creates us a automated kind of receipt, I guess, or invoice for each of the different subcontractors. And they get automatically sent out. So we've taken a really long process and automated as much as we can. It's still a working process, but it is definitely improving the way we're working, and we're now linking this back to the PO as well.
Wow, that is a complicated process, but that's I think the most impressive one so far in terms of how you managed to achieve all of that. So you got, from what I'm seeing there, you've got several linked forms and sets of data that you're integrating with. And you're also integrating with Power Automate, interestingly. So as you well know, FlowForma integrates very well with Power Automate, and you can actually push information through Power
Yeah.
Automate into other applications. So yeah, that's a really, really interesting process. And it's really, again, very impressive that it was all put together, using a no-code tool, and basically using very little IT knowledge, if any,
Yeah.
to get all that working.
Yeah, I agree. No, the none of these processes that we've built so far have any involvement with IT.
Yeah.
So, and I think that for us is key.
Yeah, we
I'm
see
sure that's
that.
the same with most companies.
Yeah, we see it again and again across our client base. A lot of people start using no-code process automation because basically there's a little bit of frustration, I guess, with IT, in the sense that whether it's an internal IT department or an external IT vendor, it's expensive and time-consuming to get systems put together by those resources. So they look to, I mean, a big reason why people look to FlowForma is they want to take control of things themselves.
Yeah.
They know very well what they want to do, and they're happy to experiment and innovate and play around and actually get something together themselves to solve their problems. So it's people, if you like, becoming self-sufficient, taking control and digitizing processes for themselves, which is clearly what you're doing, and doing it very effectively too. So it's great to see that. Yeah, it's great to see that.
On to the next
What we
one.
might do is look at this one here. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one was a site request. This is using GIS and Power Automate as well. So we use the FlowForma function of uploading images.
Yes.
We capture some metadata with those images, and then we push those through to SharePoint, and then use Power Automate to bring that into our GIS platform, which geolocates those photos across the project with some AI functionality to try and capture or kind of meta tag each of the photos with descriptive names.
Very good. Wow, that's impressive. It's so impressive what cloud-based systems are able to do these days. And FlowForma allows you to digitize process, capture information on forms, etc. But then you've also got background image processing through tools like Power Automate to help you analyze images and, as you say, extract metadata and so on from them, basically using artificial intelligence routines in the background. And that's all achieved using no code. It's really quite surprising how much you can achieve with it, and the sophistication of the solutions that you can build.
Yes.
And again, the integration seems to be just getting easier and easier. Like we see ArcGIS, a very common system throughout the construction client base that we have, and to see that it's so easy to integrate with it is fantastic. On the point of integration, I just want to say that we've recognized at FlowForma the need for integration. That basically, it's all well and good to digitize a process, but at the end of the day, very often the data is stored in, let's say, a project management system in the background, and you need to be able to interact with that system and pull project data out and push project data in and so on. So just as a company focus, we've made that a focus over the past 12 months and increased greatly the amount of systems that we support and can integrate with. Because I think, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, I think the only limitation with FlowForma is yourself. So I think you can pretty much achieve anything. Well, for me, it's I get asked if we can do certain things, and yeah, it's just about working through the process and seeing how you can integrate all these tools that, as you say, you're integrating with. So yeah, the only limitation for me is the person building the form.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the way it needs to be, I think, because the person building that form is the person who has all the knowledge. They know the business requirements, they know their team, their resources, the job at hand, etc., and they're best placed to build a solution that that addresses that problem. So yeah, absolutely. So what we might do is just move on to next question. So what does success look like for Downer from digitizing processes?
So as I said, the pivot to Dig has been a big win for us. It's bringing the GIS platform to the safety area. It allows us to make sure that the site teams are actually looking at everything in one system, which has been great. It's definitely reduced admin time for site staff, finance staff, my team, the survey team. Everyone, and it ensures that everyone is following a process rather than ad hoc requests for information. Everything is done in the correct process and without all the paper, which is great. Improving the quality of documentation, that's a key one for us. We're obviously site people, so we end up on site a lot in the rain, out in the cold. Nothing comes back nice and clean, so
Yes.
kind of rushing what we're doing. So I think improving that quality for both ourselves and for our client is a big win.
Yeah.
Access to the data from anywhere, so actually being able to fill out a form, raise a purchase order out on site has been key for us. It's not something we've ever had before. It's something that gets done at the end of the day, or we have to go back to the office to do this. It's just it's the next best. It's a way to get things to site faster, which is what we need. Reduce time to completely sign off. I mean, that goes back with what I said about all data, being able to actually do that while you're out on site and things get signed off without you having to call people is a big win. And with the sign in, sign out, and linking that to an induction, improved management of site staff. So you can't, if you haven't done the right training or you haven't been inducted, you can't sign in, you can't request to be paid. And it just improves, it makes sure that everyone is doing the process correctly and no one's trying to skip them.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been a lot of big wins in terms of health and safety and making sure that everyone is trained with what we've got.
Yeah, like what I'm hearing there is essentially that by introducing digital processes, you're kind of enforcing or encouraging people to adopt standardized processes. And if people are following the same steps every time, it's reducing the risk to the business overall and improving the situation with health and safety. And also gathering data in a consistent way. So you're improving the quality ultimately, like as you say here, of documentation, but you're also gathering that data so that you can analyze it later on and use the outcome of that analysis, I guess, to help with continuous improvement to improve your processes over time and so on, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So I think that almost the way I see it is like digitization is the first step in continuous improvement. So once you've actually gone through the trouble of digitizing a process, you've thought about that process, you've thought about the resources that are used in the system, in the field, etc. And you put a lot of thought into it. It's been an education to actually go through digitization of a process, and it puts you in a great place then to start refining it over time by analyzing the process performance and looking at those bottlenecks and then trying to change the process to iron out the bottlenecks and so on, which you can do once you've got control over digitization. Yeah, you can do that. You can start improving things. So,
yeah, and I think I believe we have certain processes built where we had maybe 3 or 4 of them, which would be 3 or 4 different paper processes you would normally have to go through, and we brought those into one platform, into one process. So with the dynamic functionality of FlowForma, it allows us to turn things on and off depending on answers. This is really been a game changer for us on site.
It's interesting you say that. We have another client I'm thinking of who've actually reduced 21 separate paper forms into one single dynamic electronic form, and it just made a massive difference and really helped with adoption. I guess one of the things, and I'm sure, Karl, you relate to this, is that when you introduce a digital process system, you've got to sell it to the end users. And you got to pick areas that you know that they're going to be that are going to encourage them to adopt, right? And that what you just said there, that aspect of a dynamic digital form that actually changes based on the data you input, That can be a real selling point. We've seen that again and again, actually, that helps people understand the benefits, that they've got less
definitely.
work to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is we'll just move on to question 6. So you've had some success. You've built some quite complex and interesting solutions. So what's next for down in New Zealand, and what are you going to do with FlowForma next?
I think the first bit is to move, bringing this. So as each project finishes, the same people move on to other projects, and they're asking for these processes that we're building. So it's a great story for us to pass on to projects, which is encouraging more and more people to adopt it. So yeah, I guess my role is to encourage the whole of down in New Zealand transport to adopt this tool, this process tool. So it's really it's definitely picking up pace quite quickly. We've already started talking about some really big processes with other parts of the department.
Right.
I guess searching for new opportunities for digitized processes. So I guess for me, it's not just about what forms do we have that we need to digitize. It is actually about what other things can we do that there isn't a form for, but we do need to automate the process going forward. Adapt forms using automation. So a bit like what we're doing now with how do we get the induction form linked to the in and out to create automated timesheets. All of these things take a lot of time, take people 4 or 5 hours a day in some cases, depending on the size of the site. So it's working with our site team and improving and getting their feedback and bringing them along for the story, really. A big one for me would be to actually get our downer standards and digitize those, and hopefully that will help push this across more of the down in New Zealand sectors. And I'm really keen to build a team of process creators, because I think the more we have, the faster this steam train will go. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to say this is something that we see again and again with our client base as well, that you focus on some well-known pain points. In this case, like you had the permit to dig, you knew you had a problem, you knew you had a challenge. You focused in on that and delivered a solution that everybody could see the benefit of. And it's having that ability to show people clearly, well, hey, there's a benefit to digitizing processes. And that just helps with adoption, and it helps gather momentum for change. So it encourages people then to say, okay, well, maybe we'll look at this other process that we have, or maybe we'll think about digitizing something that, as you say, we don't have forms for right now. So it's a process that happens in your organization, but maybe it's not very visible as to how it happens, etc. And digitizing that process is a way to discover how to do that. And you get your successes, and then you talk about them, you broadcast them, and other people in the organization hear about it and then want to jump on the bandwagon, and also
that's exactly what's happening.
That's great to hear. That really is great to hear. And it's as you say, you end up with a team of process creators. So you end up with a team of people in the business that are enjoy digitizing processes, and actually that adds sees it as a increasing their skill set, increasing their abilities. So it kind of sells itself almost. So
no. Yeah, and I think the fact that it's not just you're not just building a processes and making them go live. There is an actual governance functionality that allows you to review those processes before they're used, and it gives you that opportunity then to go, oh, this is really good, we're going to use this on all of our projects. I think having that will help. It just, again, it saves time. It makes sure that everyone's using the correct version, and it keeps our quality team and health and safety team happy. So
I think you're bang on right. I think it's very important to have that quality control in there, because you can digitize a process well, you can digitize it badly. Okay, so having those kind of standards and having those controls, so that you can give people the freedom to create, but at the same time you can review that and review their outputs, and then decide whether it's really going to add value, or maybe it needs a bit more work. So you
Yeah,
pass it back to the creator and say, hey, you need to fix this, you need to do this slightly differently. So you have that
absolutely.
review point. Yeah. I think that's really, really very important. Yeah, especially when you try to start to scale up process automation.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's true.
Great. So what we'll do is I just going to show one slide to just close out this section, Karl, if that's okay. And this is to talk a little bit about FlowForma, the company. So FlowForma, the company, it's basically the product was produced back in 2016, launched onto the market, and we won many awards in the sense that we brought a new type of product to the market, which was focused very much on business users. And this was really seen as something quite revolutionary in the market, so that people could actually configure their own processes without that need for IT resources. Currently, we have over 200,000 users across the globe. So we have Downer in New Zealand, which you just talked about, but we also have customers all the way around the globe, right away around to the west coast of the US. So we're a large company. We're on the growth curve at the moment, and we feel that business people automating the processes themselves is very much the way to go to get over the bottleneck of lack of IT resources. That's a challenge for everybody around the world. So what I do now, Karl, is just go through Q&A. So let me have a look at the questions, and I might throw some at yourself and some at me. Let's see. So the first question is, how long does it take to digitize a process? So we talked about the work that you did there on those processes, and they all look fantastic, might I say. But approximately how long does it take to digitize a process? Maybe Karl, you could take that one.
The take. I guess it depends on the process, but you need to approach them in an agile way, I would say. So you start with what you already have. The way we did it was we took down the standard form, we replicate it in a digitized process, and then we look to improve it with the feedback from the team. So I mean, it can, but initially you can throw together a digitized form in an hour prior to review. I think I would probably say it's a really simple tool to create something pretty quickly.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a great approach, is kind of create something quickly, and then pass it out for review, and then refine it over time.
Yes.
But the fact that you can throw it together so quickly, like an hour, that's amazing. And it's great to get some results quickly, I guess, because you can then show it to people and get their buy-in, right? Yeah. So
I think if you start with something they already know, and then you work with them to improve it, it's that's the best approach.
Great. Oh, I think that's very wise advice there. Start with something they know. Yeah, that's a really good one. Because a lot of people ask me how to get started, and I think that approach there, to start with the obvious problem that they're very well aware of, that's definitely the one to start with, and get people's buy-in and start the snowball rolling. So yeah, that's great, Karl. Thanks very much. The next question I have here is, what are the technical requirements of the system? Now, I'll try and take that one, and I'm going to say that there's two interpretations, I guess, of that question. So in terms of the technical requirements to build the processes themselves, so do what Karl did, you don't have to have IT knowledge. You really need to understand the process that you have and the resources that you have, and then you can configure it using a kind of a no-code configuration tool that allows you to build it without having any technical knowledge at all. In the other interpretation of that question there now is to say, well, what requirements do you need to actually use FlowForma? What systems do you need where do you install FlowForma, if you like? Well, I can tell you that FlowForma is a product that sits on top of Microsoft SharePoint. So if you have Microsoft 365, you have SharePoint within that, and FlowForma sits inside your SharePoint system and stores all the data and documentation and all the audit trail of the processes, etc. That's all stored inside your SharePoint system automatically. So I think I'll leave it there. They're the two interpretations of that question, and hopefully one of those answers the question for you. The next one on the list is how can remote staff use the system? Maybe Karl, you could talk a little bit about that. I think you mentioned it in one of your use cases that one of the processes works with remote resources.
Yes, yeah. So we have we have the two processes written where we have everyone that gets inducted using the Engage platform. So but that is a public form that just pushes information into our platform. And then we have all our site engineers all have an account or a link in through the FlowForma account. And so we have currently we have 2 projects and we're peaking at about 90 users. In order for people to do certain things like connect to SharePoint lists, you need that functionality. So, but that's what helps drive those forms and makes the experience better for them.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, that's good. I think that covers it off well enough. The next one on the list is something I think we both already talked about maybe, but it says we often need to change processes. How easy is it to do? And I think from both perspectives, it's very easy to change a process of FlowForma. The system is kind of designed to support continuous improvement of processes. So you can go in and, for example, add a step to a process or add a field on a step or whatever, very easily using the no-code configuration tool, and then you can test out your process and then roll it out to your users. That would be my answer, Karl. I don't know if you have anything to say on that. If you in terms of ease of use.
I guess yes, it's very easy to change a process. Probably the only complication would be is getting the process approved by the department that process sits in. Obviously, but that's more of probably a big business kind of decision rather than someone who's just changing a process. But we do also have processes which are site specific, and we do adapt them on quite a regular basis to suit whatever requirements we have on site.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think it's worth saying as well that we do have other clients in the construction sector, and this is something that they avail of, because what they do is they have standardized processes, but then for every project that they launch, they make slight amendments to the processes to suit their specific project resources. So the resource team changes for every single project, and the project plan, of course, changes for every single project. So therefore, you just adjust your processes for every single project. You could just tailor your processes to work most efficiently for that particular project, right?
Yeah.
So
we have something similar called an inspection test plan, which changes depending on which product you're building. Yeah. And you by having that flexibility to change, it reduces the impact. It makes sure that the quality team can keep those up to date as we go along.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think we have time for maybe one more question. So I have one here. Could I enable supplier access? Yeah, so I'll take that one. So yeah, absolutely. You can enable your suppliers to have access to your systems. I guess what you might be thinking of is maybe supplier onboarding. I can tell you that we have a lot of clients who use FlowForma for supplier onboarding, where you're using that feature that Karl mentioned earlier on, which is called FlowForma Engage, to allow external parties to interact with your system. So let's say you had a supplier onboarding process. You could place a link on your public website, and the supplier could click on the link and fill in an onboarding form to get onto your procurement system. And they could do that without having direct access to your system, right? So they don't need direct access to your systems. They just would click on a public link and then FlowForma will display a single form of information, and it will be collected and then passed through to your process that runs in the background throughout your organization. Now, I hope that was clear. But what we can do is, if I guess just to say that if you're interested in FlowForma, you can always go on to our FlowForma website, and it'll cover off all the product features on there, and also talk to you about a lot of different use cases and success stories, etc., that might inspire you to think of scenarios in your own business where you could benefit from FlowForma. But just to go back to that question, could you enable suppliers to have access to the system? Yeah, you can, using that engage feature. Okay, so I think that's probably as many questions as we can cover off. So let me just say thank you to Karl for coming along today and telling us the Downer story and how FlowForma is being used to drive productivity in Downer. And in terms of next steps you might like to take, you can obviously download our Process Automation 2022 guide, which I think you'll find a link on the webinar here now to download that if you want to. And you can go along to our website. There's a lot more materials on there. You can go along to G2 Crowd to see reviews of FlowForma, what other people think of it. And also, we support a 14-day trial, so you can actually try out the system for yourself. We're also very happy to give you an online demonstration of the system in action. Something that we're not able to do today, but again, can I just thank Karl for supplying all those wonderful screenshots of real live processes in action. I think they were very useful to illustrate how FlowForma can be used in a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thanks, Karl.
Yeah, no, thank you. You for your time.
Thank you very much for joining us today and telling us all that very useful information. And I'd like to leave it there. So thank you, all of our listeners, for joining on the webinar, and hope you found it very useful today. Thank you very much.